Hello, everybody. On this and the next video, we're going to be talking about the concept of proportional, what it means for two quantities to be proportional, how you can tell if they are, why you should care, and a couple of approaches you can take to the kinds of calculations you tend to do once you know that two things are proportional. In addition to this video, you should have a form and a form for the next video. And as we go through, I will be asking you at times to pause and enter your answer, some questions I'm going to ask you onto that form. Remember, I'm confused is always a fine answer. I will be giving you the answer to the questions on the video in general, but I would really like you to try to answer them before you move to the point where I give you the answer. Let me bring up the slides. There we go. So, when are two quantities proportional and why do we care anyhow? So, I want to start with a quote from an op-ed that Warren Buffett wrote for the New York Times about global warming about 10 years ago. He said, "In nature, every action has consequences, a phenomenon called the butterfly effect. These consequences, moreover, are not necessarily proportional. For example, doubling the carbon dioxide we belch into the atmosphere may far more than double the subsequent problems for society. Realizing this, the world properly worries about greenhouse emissions." So I'd just like you to take a moment and try to say, what does he mean when he's saying not necessarily proportional? What are those words supposed to be telling you? So give me your thoughts on the form and then come back to the video. I'm not going to answer this right now. I want to look at another example. I'm going to look at some examples drawn from US politics, specifically our House of Representatives and our Electoral College. Don't worry if you don't know too much about how US politics works. I'll be explaining everything you need to. Essentially, you need to know that each state has a number of representatives in our National House of Representatives, and the number of representatives a state gets depends upon its population. And at the moment, the number of representatives each state gets is its population divided by 710,000 people. So just to figure out how this works, say the population of Tennessee is 6,375,431. I'd ask you to take just a moment and figure out how many seats it has in the House and give me your answer on the form. Before I move on, I will say that figuring out the number of seats that each state gets is exactly why the Constitution mandates that we have a census every 10 years. The essential job of the census is to count the population and use that to determine representation for each state in the House. So hopefully you've calculated the answer for Tennessee. Using this formula, given the population of Tennessee, we can figure out that it gets 9 seats in the House. Notice the answer has to be a whole number. We don't have fractional number of representatives. People often ask me what they should round to, and sometimes the answer is the place you should round depends upon the question. If your question requires a whole number as an answer, do not give me an answer with a bunch of decimal places in it. So that's our answer for Tennessee. Now I'd like you to do work the other way for Illinois. Illinois has 18 seats in the House of Representatives, and you should figure out what its approximate population is. You're not going to be able to give me an exact answer. So calculate that and write the answer in the form. So here are the numbers. Tennessee, with its 9 seats and its population of a little over 6 million. Illinois has 18 seats and its exact population, and you certainly would not have calculated a number that's exact, but your number should be very close to this, is about 12,864,000. So it's a simple calculation. Now let's move on to talk about the Electoral College. That is the way we vote for president. In the United States, people in each state vote, and generally, with 2 exceptions, whoever wins that state gets all of that state's votes for president in the Electoral College. So it's worth asking how many votes the state gets for president, how many electors does it have in the Electoral College? And the answer is its number of representatives plus 2. That's 2 for the 2 senators. In other words, the number of electoral votes a state gets is its population divided by 710,000 plus 2. So that means that Tennessee would get 11 votes in the Electoral College, Illinois would get 20, and I'd like you to take a moment and calculate how many electoral votes Florida gets, where Florida has a population of 18,900,000 people. So again, answer on the form. When you did that, I expect your calculation was that Florida would get 29 electoral votes. And if you figured that out, you would have seen along the way that it would have gotten 27 House seats. So these are the numbers for these 3 different states. And I'd like you to take a moment and just look at this form, at this table, and tell me if you think this all seems fair. I'm not going to say what's fair and what isn't. I just want you to look at this and tell me if anything stands out to you. And it's always, if you don't have any thoughts or if you're confused, that's a fine thing to say. Okay? Here's what I see when I look at this. Notice that the population of Illinois is very close to twice the population of Tennessee, and that the population of Florida is very close to 3 times the population of Tennessee. So when we look at the House seats, those same ratios hold. Illinois has twice the people and twice the number of House seats. Florida has 3 times the people and 3 times the number of House seats. And that pretty much feels fair. Twice as many people, twice as many votes, pretty much means every 6 million people get represented by 9 people in the House, whether there are 6 million or 12 million or 18 million of them. 9 seats to every 6,300,000 people. But look over at these electoral college numbers. Illinois has twice the population of Tennessee, but it doesn't have twice as many electoral college votes. Tennessee gets 11. Illinois, with twice as many people, does not get 22. It only gets 20. So you double the population, but you don't double the number of electoral college votes. And the same thing happens when we compare Tennessee to Florida. Florida has 3 times the population of Tennessee, but if you tripled 11, you would get 33. And Florida doesn't get 33 electoral college votes, it only gets 29. So when we look at the electoral college, you see that every 6 million people, there are a different number of electoral college votes depending on which state they're in. And this tells us that the number of votes a state gets in the electoral college is not proportional to its population. It's very simple. The larger a state is, the more votes it gets, but not in this sort of double one, the other double simple relationship sort of way. If you look at the equations, you'll see that the equations are sort of both very simple. House seats population divided by 710,000. Electoral votes is population divided by 710,000 plus 2. These are both straightforward linear relationships. Nevertheless, one of them, the House seats, is proportional, and the other one, the electoral college votes, is not. And so I just wanted to return to that quote I read to you at the beginning, and this is what Warren Buffett was talking about. He was saying, when you double the carbon dioxide, you may do worse than simply doubling the subsequent problems. You may do a lot more than twice as many problems. So you can't just say, okay, twice as much carbon dioxide, twice the number of problems, but we can afford that. You don't know how large the problems will be. That's the end of this video. On the next video, I will go into a little more detail about exactly how you can figure out whether 2 quantities are proportional, why you should care, and how you do some of the calculations with them. That next video will also be part of what I'm asking you to do for our next class. Thank you.